Welcome everybody to the Sports Hub Underground. Matt Dolloff here with Ty Anderson. As we are every single episode, we got a remote episode for you to take you into the weekend. Ty, how's it going over there?
What's up? How are we doing today?
I'm doing good. My car is fixed to update our faithful listeners on the last episode. And I told you about that part that just fell off. Of course, the guy's like, "Oh yeah, that's just a heat shield. You don't need that." So they put parts on the car that just fall off and you don't need them anymore. I guess that's a thing with cars.
Like steering wheels, like regular wheels. You don't need all of them.
Yeah, hubcaps, catalytic converter. You don't need any of that shit. So, all right, but we got a healthy car, healthy program here. What's not so healthy is the local hockey club. So, we're going to dive into that as we tend to do on every episode here of the Sports Hub Underground. Ty, the Bruins have gotten back to their sucky ways other than that one game against the New Jersey Devils. They've had a couple of bad wins here recently where you're like, okay, let's take it easy on that. Let's take the scoring down a notch. We want to get a good draft pick here, but they righted the ship last night. They blew it against the Blackhawks, one of the worst teams in the league. They give up 3 goals in what felt like 10 seconds. It's just crazy how they could have the same old issues against even one of the worst teams in the league. But I guess that's technically what the Bruins are right now. But here's the thing. The results don't really matter as long as they lose. It doesn't really matter how they look as a team right now or how many points they have. I know that might be sort of hard to let go for some people, where it's like we've been used to this team being in the thick of things and being in contention for, a decade. But we're in uncharted territory right now. So
almost 2 decades.
Almost 2 decades of being in the playoff mix, and like they haven't been this far out of it in a long time. So it's been taking some getting used to. But like I guess we could just focus on sort of individual players for the rest of this show, for the bulk of this show, because I think that's really more important than assessing the team overall. But do you have any big picture thoughts as we wind down to the end of the regular season here?
I mean, nothing new outside of what we've talked about already, where like this team needs a superstar. This team needs offensive firepower. It's funny watching Connor Bedard on Thursday kind of reminds me of like why I'm kind of out on James Hagens. They are very similar size. And Hagens could probably have a bit more compete, but you know, I've yet to be overly wowed by Connor Bedard. It's nothing personal. I watch a lot of Blackhawks games and I wish I didn't. But I watch him and I just see a guy who is addicted to the perimeter. I mean, he had chances to cut through the defense last night, get a high danger chance, and every time he peeled off to the side, right? And is that you're gun shy because you're 5'10" and 175 pounds, or is that something that's just who you're going to be your whole career? And so I guess my big picture thought is like when you watch teams, you know, I see Jersey. I know they lose that game, but like they got Nico Hischier down the middle, an absolute horse, a two-way threat, a guy who can be put in any situation and be okay. I watch Carolina, Sebastian Aho, the same kind of mold. Even Buffalo with Tage Thompson. Like you look at these rosters and like they got star players down the middle, or I'm sorry, the teams that have that kind of do it all type, they tend to be better franchises, right? And so I look at the Bruins and I go, you're not getting that guy in free agency. You tried that already with Elias Lindholm. Didn't happen. You can, however, probably get something closer to that guy with your top 5 pick this year. I would have to imagine that no matter where you're picking, you got a decent to great chance at getting, whether it's a Frondell, whether it's a Denoyer, whether it's take your pick of whoever. I'm missing somebody right now, but like this is how you're gonna get that player, right? And so I think that's where the Bruins are right now. But just watching them, watching around the league, they really need another star player. But I think especially that high impact, all situation, big bodied, not afraid kind of center down the middle. That's what I feel like.
You're saying center. Like they could get that at the wing, possibly, like if they get their version of call it by Mark Stone from the Vegas Golden Knights. Like there's a couple of prospects at the top of the draft this year that, from what I've seen and read, like it feels like they might fit that mold. Porter Martone is one, and Roger McQueen, who was I believe a guy that Don Sweeney has actually scouted already. Bruins are already looking at him, so I might have to put the odds on favorite to be McQueen to be the Bruins guy at this stage, but I'm completely with you on the center thing. And the Hagens comparison to Bedard is fair. I mean, who knows what James Hagen's mentality is going to be when he gets to the National Hockey League, but it's true with Bedard. Like the one thing about him that's undeniable is his shot, his release. But how effective is that going to be just from the perimeter? Like he could be deadly from the slot if he's able and willing to get in there. And so I think that's a fair criticism for him right now, and that's something he's going to have to get in there on that good ice if he wants to, score a lot of goals, which I think he has a lot of potential to do. Like he's a guy that I look at as right now a long shot because he hasn't proven it yet, but like a long-term dark horse kind of bet to challenge for the Ovechkin record. Like that's how good his shot is. But it means nothing if you're not willing to get to that good ice, which is true. And he doesn't do enough of the other things, which you do see from a guy like Nico Hischier on the Devils. And like, he's a big reason why Devils are, what they are right now. And so, yeah, they do have to get that all around guy. You mentioned Anton Frondel in the draft. I think Caleb Denoyer is another guy that you mentioned. If they dropped a little bit in the draft by the end of the season, I'd mentioned Jake O'Brien on an earlier podcast. Like these guys seem like sort of two-way do-it-all types of players, which yes, it's important. It's important to get that guy, and especially if you're not in line to get this year Michael Meese is that guy. Year after, you're the guy you told me about that I should have known about before. Gavin McKenna is going to be that guy in 2026. If you're not in line to get that guy, then at least get your JT Miller, your Nico Hischier, your guy that can do it all. He'd be, elite number 2 center. You could get away with him as maybe your top center if you have an elite wing next to him, which here you might have that with a David Pastrnak. But yeah, long-term, big picture, like that's what they need. And like, I don't know how they're going to go about doing that, if they're going to get that guy this off season. But yeah, it's a fair question to look at. You mentioned Elias Lindholm. Lindholm's looked pretty good playing with Pastrnak and Geeky lately. Do you see that as something that they could maybe build on for next year? Like this is what they were hoping for in camp, was Lindholm playing center next to Pastrnak. And I thought they looked great in camp. Lindholm, I believe, had to deal with an injury, or maybe it was he had his kid, or maybe that was both of those things. So maybe he just sort of slowed down in camp. He never really picked it back up. He has around 40 points this year. You're going to need more out of him either way, whether he's your top line center or not, or in the middle 6. Do you see like maybe he could, if he settles in and gets a full training camp now that he's sort of used to it and he sort of knows what his role is going to be, if they could get him going with Pastrnak, if Pastrnak could make him better as well. Like, do you see like maybe that's hopefully something that they could build on, because Lindholm's here. I don't think Lindholm's going anywhere. He's here for the next 6 years at $7.75 million.
Yeah, I do, and maybe it doesn't completely transform his year, but it allows him to end the year feeling better about his game, feeling better about himself, which sometimes can be really important. Guys have in the past gone to play in the World Championships because they want to end their year on a better note than it ended. Whether that's team performance wise or professional, their own performance, like individual rather, like they'll do that. And so maybe he feels better having this kind of finish. Now, what I think is important to note about Elias Lindholm and not connecting with David Pastrnak out of the gate, we gotta not forget that David Pastrnak did not look good in the first month plus of the season. You were trying to make that connection happen. You were trying to make that fit happen with what was basically the worst version of David Pastrnak that we have seen this season. So to see the success now, perhaps it's not surprising. Pastrnak has kind of always gotten better as the year has gone on, but it's something that makes you go, okay, this is an option, right? And you look at Lindholm, his best year in Calgary came with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk on his line. This is sort of this is sort of like a bootleg version of that, right? You got your
Yeah.
sniper, your scorer, the all-world skill with David Pastrnak, and then you have the guy who wins battles down low, extends possession, can score from in tight. He's got a good stick to deflect pucks. It's not Matthew Tkachuk by any stretch, but it's like a bootleg version of him. Like so you're kind of going for the same kind of vibe here to a certain degree. And so listen, if Lindholm has to be with a certain star player to get production out of him, whatever. That's better than the alternative of him being a fourth line center making almost $8 million. So I don't
Can't
mind
have
that.
it.
Right. So like if he's playing with Pastrnak and they're successful, like they have in the last week, or if you go out and you sign an Ehlers or a Marner or a Besser, and you put him with Lindholm, and that's good. It's like, okay, I'll take it. I don't care. I just need him to produce. I don't care. Like he's not a guy I look at and go, oh, you got to put him with. No, he's got to drive his own line. Like it's cool if he can, but you signed him to play with Pastrnak. You signed him to play power play. You signed him to put up points. And so if you look at him and you go, okay, you're on a third line with Hustadinov and Jacob Lauko, you're not going to get what you paid for, right? You're never going to get that out of him. And so I think this is where he should be. It's nice to see it work. But remains to be seen if that connection carries over to next year. But I guess to bring it on home, you just feel better about yourself, right? Like you just feel
Yep.
better about your game. And sometimes that's all you need. Like we know that as people. Like, like we'll be having a dog shit week. But like one good thing happens, it's like, all right, here comes a rally. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of I think, it's applicable to life, sports, whatever you want to call it. But like I think that's something that is a positive development for this team that desperately needs one. Losing, like 18 of their final 23 games, whatever it's been.
Yeah, like it's a human thing. Like everybody's human. Most guys need things to feel good about themselves, and so like a professional hockey player is no different. Like just because he makes $8 million a year doesn't mean that that he doesn't have issues and things. He might have a lack of confidence at times and needs things to get him back going. So yeah, you got to hope that this can carry over into next year because they're going to need him. They're going to need him to be a lot better than he was. I feel like he's sort of gone under the radar as a guy that guy that like they need to be better going forward. While we're on the topic of David Pastrnak, not really much left to say at this point. Not the most interesting, podcast topic. How great is David Pastrnak? But he passes the 100-point mark for the third straight year, and this is probably the most impressive version of that yet. Especially like as you said before, like how slow he started the year. Like there was a time where he was on pace for like 70 points. So I haven't looked it up. It would be interesting to look up like how he's like what his pace has been for the last like 2-3 months. It's probably been a ridiculous, Kucherov type of pace for David Pastrnak. But like, the fact like when Mike Felger, the chief David Pastrnak critic, the guy that will go out of his way to rip David Pastrnak even after he has like a 5-point night, like even he has stood down saying like, okay, all right, David Pastrnak showing me a little bit. I don't know if we've really touched on the topic too much on this very podcast lately, but Bruins are going to need a new captain next year, and I think Pastrnak is the no-brainer choice. I sense that you agree with that, and so I just wanted to hear your thought on that.
I do agree, and it goes beyond the way he's carried himself. It goes beyond the way that he speaks as a captain, or as a potential captain. For me, a big sneaky reason why. Can you guess it? I want to hear you guess it.
Sneaky reason why David Pastrnak should be the captain?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he said he's carried himself. That's what I would have guessed.
Availability.
Yes.
He is almost
We've talked
never
about
hurt.
that.
He is almost never hurt. And so while listen, I hear you. If you're one of these people that talks about Charlie McAvoy and you say Charlie McAvoy should be the captain, I hear you. I'm not saying that's a bad pick. McAvoy, the way he plays, he's gonna get hurt. We've seen it, right? Like we've seen this year. He gets hurt.
Yeah.
And so that's an issue for me. If I'm naming a team captain, I have to hope or have at least a bit more confidence that he's not going to miss 20 to 25 games a year. Like I got to feel good about that, like, and that's I think Pastrnak has been a model of health the last few years, and so I think that's a big reason why I go with him. Um, I also think that when it comes to walking the walk and talking the talk, like Pastrnak has grown up. Um, he did learn from Bergeron in Marchand, and you want my opinion, the Bruins are kind of testing him right now. They call up Fraser Minten from Providence, and they put his locker next to Pastrnak. The last guy they did that with was Brad Marchand.
Yeah,
Brad
and
Marchand
Bergeron.
would have rookies or first-year guys next to his stall, or first-year Bruins, whatever it was, to try to get them comfortable, because they go, this guy's going to get you comfortable. He's going to bring you along. If you're doing that with Pastrnak, that kind of tells me that, like, you kind of look at him like that kind of guy. And, I don't look at him and go, oh, he can't be a captain because that's going to take away from what he does well production-wise. Like, it doesn't stop McDavid. It doesn't stop Matthews. It doesn't stop, Nathan McKinnon, who's like a de facto captain with Landeskog out.
Mhm.
Like, doesn't stop those guys. They're still
No.
productive. And so I don't agree with that philosophy or that belief. But I think he's earned it. I think the way he carries himself, the way he talks, like, it's very captain-like. I feel like I've noticed that more this year than ever before.
That's a weird take. Haven't heard that one where, like, if David Pastrnak's the captain, he's not going to score as much because they
Yeah,
think
it's
like
been
you have
weird.
more responsibility on the ice. Is that like he'd have to play more defense or something? Like you have to kill penalties. Like I don't really see that one. I feel like I get you say he talks like a captain, but he feels more like a lead by example where he's always available. He shows up most of the time and he goes out and he produces. And so like I feel like he would just have to just continue doing what he's doing. And he just happens to have the C on his sweater. And guys
Mhm.
can look at and you can point to him. You could talk to a guy like Fraser Minten, like just look how Pastrnak handles his business. Look how he goes about doing it. And like just because he turns the puck over sometimes on the ice doesn't mean that he doesn't, have the right approach and do it the right way and play the right way and all those things. And so I feel he just needs to keep doing what he's doing. He'll just happen to have the C on his sweater.
I honestly like I gotta be honest with you. I hate the turnover talk. I just, like, it drives me nuts because, like, I mean, this is what happens when you have a guy who has double the points of the next closest Bruin. I mean, he literally has double the next closest player on the team in terms of
Haven't heard
points.
haven't heard much about the turnovers lately. I think you can
But,
kind
like,
of put that to the side now.
it's just wild though because, like, I don't know, like, it's the same thing with, like, like, we go back to that Four Nations game, right? Like the final. Everyone was jorking it, and by jorking it, I mean my peanuts. Talking about, sorry, I just want to reference a meme there. It's
What?
just a meme. It's a shit posting meme.
All right, all right,
But
all right. To me.
but anyways, everyone online was salivating about Brady Tkachuk. Oh, you got to get Brady Tkachuk. Trade pasta for Brady Tkachuk. It's like, okay, well, did you watch that game? Because if you watched that game, you would have seen that, like, 2 shifts before Brady Tkachuk scored the goal, he had a horrendous giveaway that should have been a goal. And it's like, guess what? Good players turn it over. That's just what it is. That is how that happens. And so it's funny that I find the fans lust over certain players, but it's like, no, he does this. It's like, okay, but he also has problems too. No one's perfect except
It's almost
McDavid and McKinnon.
it's like getting on like Peyton Manning or Tom Brady for having the most incompletions or something like that. It's like, well, I mean, he throws the ball 50 times a game. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, like, you got to look at it like, sorry, I was trying to pull up a stat, but I can't now. You got to look at it from the scope of, like, elite players. If they're asked to do everything, the negative numbers are gonna uptick as well because that's just like, it's exposure. It's a higher rate of things going sideways. It's just how it is, and so. I just going back to the overall topic though, like, I feel like he's the captain. If not him, who? You know what I mean? Because, like we talked about before, Matt, like, they kind of traded their not sexy other picks. Like, Carlo would have been a pick that I think would have been under the radar.
Coyle.
Coyle would have been a pick that would be under the radar. Again, not sexy, but, like, that's a leader. That's a guy who, again, knows how to carry himself and says all the right things, is accountable, leads by example, all that. Like, those guys are all gone. So if it's not Pastrnak and it's not McAvoy, I don't know who else it is. I have no idea who else it could be.
Yeah, no, it's got to be Pastrnak. That I feel like that debate. That's not even a debate. Like that discussion should be over. It should be him. End of story. McAvoy can lead the defense, but like to your point, if he's only playing 60 games every year, like he's gotta figure out that part, and then maybe he'll have a sniff at the sea. You did mention Fraser Minten during that last conversation, and so that's another nice segue. We're full of segues on this episode of the Sports Hub Underground. So I want to ask you about him. I like what I've seen. Like I don't want to get too ahead of myself on what he could be for the Bruins, but keep it at maybe middle six center at this point. Like I feel like he has a chance to be what I sort of hoped that a guy like Trent Frederick or even a Johnny Beecher could have been for the Bruins, where he does play that sort of sound all around game and he can score a little bit. Like I loved his goal against New Jersey where he sort of disrupts the breakout attempt to get the possession back to the Bruins. Then he finds that good ice in the slot. And then, as soon as he has a chance to fire the puck, he fires, goes top shelf, and it's in the net. And so I'd love that. And yeah, I really like what I've seen out of Minten. He doesn't look like a 20-year-old out there, which is what I love about him. And he's like, we've talked about them needing a superstar. Like, I don't think Fraser Minten's going to be a superstar in this league, but they're also going to need guys like him. Like they just traded away, their core, like we were just talking about. They traded away Charlie Coyle. Like, can Fraser Minten be the next Charlie Coyle? Maybe even a little bit better than that, offensively anyway. Charlie Coyle with a little more finish. Like, he's going to be a huge addition for the team long term if he can do that and keep that up.
I mean, that's their hope, right? They hope he can be that kind of guy. Their center situation, I think, is really interesting. Like because listen, they could move Pavel Zacha to the wing, and they'll be okay if they do that. But like, you look at their immediate pipeline here. You have Lindholm somewhere in your top 9. You bring in, you have Minten. You acquire via trade. You bring in Middlestat, who has term left on his contract. He's not a rental. You have Matty Poitras down in the minors right now. You also have Mark Kastelik, who you re-signed. Like, you got a lot of guys that can play center, and Pavel Zacha, who, again, you can move into wing, but you kind of have a lot of them, right? And if I'm looking at this roster, and they have options, right? Like, you can put a guy like Minten down in Providence. I think Poitras, you can put him back in Providence for another year or two. Like, you have options there, of course, but they want to get some of these guys playing, right? Like, and I have a hard time personally. I'm curious how you feel about this. I have a hard time seeing a 2025-26 Bruins roster that has both Matthew Poitras and Casey Middlestad in the lineup. I just feel like they're too kind of similar, and also you're not going to have one of those guys playing fourth line. That doesn't really make a lot of sense for them.
If they're both going to play center and neither of them are fourth line, like how do you fit them in? That's a fair question.
Right. And so I look at their center picture right now and I go, yeah, you alleviate some of that pressure by moving Zacha back to left wing, but like that seems like potential for a hockey trade. Like, if they like somebody in the draft, and let's say, it's the end of the first round, the board is breaking their way, and they're like, shit, we can get a player here if we can make some moves here. Would a contender who'd be at the bottom of that first round, would they want a Middlestat? Would they want a Poitras? Like, what do you do to make that kind of happen? And so, like, you got 2 second-round picks. Do you use that and one of those players to move up if there's a player you like? I'd be curious. I'd be curious if they would entertain that because, I truly think that every avenue is open for them right now, right? And, do I love the idea of giving up on Matty Poitras? No, absolutely not. But, how do they view him, right? Like, I view him differently than how the team views him, clearly. You also have Husendinov, who they're playing on the wing. He can play center.
Yeah, I was curious about that, too. Like, he's been left wing most of the time. Like, do you think that's how they view him, or is that just where they have to fit him in right now?
I mean, I think probably long term, again, because of their logjam, that's probably how they view him. But, like, like I look at a guy like, okay, so they have 2 second-round picks. One is Colorado's, I believe, and the other is St. Louis's. And those are going to be, middle to end of the second round, depending on what happens. there's a guy in the second round who could go probably top 35, top 40. Carter Amico. He's a 6'5" right shot D, plays at BU. Like, hello, you trade Brandon Carlo. You're like that seems like a Bruin to me.
Yeah.
And so if you can find a way to move up the board and make a trade to get a guy like that, that would make a lot of sense to me, from a Bruin standpoint. And so I just wonder about things like that. Like, that's something that I think is going to be worth watching here because their center pitcher just feels incomplete right now. Not incomplete in bodies, but incomplete in terms of roles, where guys are playing, how the Bruins view them, what their ceiling is, all of that. I don't know, man. This sounds like wrong, and I don't mean for it to sound this way, but I think Middlestat is just he's a soft offensive kind of weapon, right? And you can't really use him in a lot of ways. And you know, if you're gonna develop Matt Poitras, for me, I'm kind of all right, give him more ozone run time. I don't know if you can do those two things at the same time while also giving Pastrnak in his line the run that you want to give them. It's just not a lot of face-offs to go around for everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, there's not. It's true. They have a lot of options to figure out those middle six center options. Like you need that top guy, and you got to figure that out. But then the middle six, they got their options. The reason I like Minten is that he feels like a true center, and he's a bigger guy than a Potra or a Hustadinov or a Middlestat. It's like he feels like he plays more of that all around game that we're talking about, which I feel like I'd want to consider him sort of like the favorite to get one of those middle six spots over the other guys we've mentioned. But yeah, that's something that they're going to have to figure out. And I don't know how much faith I have in them figuring that out. It doesn't seem like they've done a great job, figuring out how to use guys the best and how to develop guys. And that's just another big picture thing that I guess it's a topic for another day. Last topic for today, Ty, is that you just touched on the defense. It's you really can't read too much into how they're playing defensively with McAvoy and Lindholm out this whole time. Traded away Carlo. But McAvoy's back next year. Hampus Lindholm's back next year. If they don't package Mason Lowry in a big hockey trade, he's back next year. You said the right side they're going to need to figure out. How do you see them filling in? Call it a top four defensive role next year. Call it the second right shot defenseman. They're going to need someone to take on that Carlo spot. I just don't see an immediate option there in the organization right now. So, do you think they should make a big trade? Should they? Is there someone that you want them to sign in free agency, or try to take a stab at that on the open market? How do you see them sort of filling out the defense for next year?
I got to be honest with you. I have no
Uh-oh.
idea. I have no idea.
Yeah.
This is a bad free agent market on the back end, on the right side particularly. You have Aaron Ekblad, you have Neil Pionk, and then it falls off a cliff. And then I think the third best guy is probably 40-year-old Brent Burns. It's not a great list.
I'd take Pionk, but that's going to be one of those they're going to have to overpay.
Right. And do you overpay for a defenseman when you have a glaring need up front for more offense, right?
Yeah.
Would you rather have to give a guy like Pionk 7-8 million, whatever it's going to be, because everyone's number is going to go up here? Or would you rather go big swinging for the big fish and try to get a star player for 10 million or 15 million, depending on who it is? There's an element here of the Bruins really if you trust your system and you trust your ability to maximize guys, right? It all depends who you hire to as a head coach. If you hire a guy who is more offensive minded, maybe you're not worried about that back end and you're gonna, you're gonna say, no, we gotta get offense. We gotta try to win games. We gotta try to win more games 4-3 and 5-4. But if you bring in a more defensive oriented coach, maybe you do prioritize one of those guys. But it's not a great market for it. It's just not a great market for it. And so maybe that's a trade route. But right now I would sort of have I would sort of have them pegged to have Andrew Peak in their top four. Maybe opposite Hampus Lindholm, which we saw late in the season last year, and is actually pretty decent as a pairing. But that's the closest thing you have to Brandon Carlo. And so if Lindholm played with Carlo, this is sort of the natural kind of move for the Bruins. Then you manage that RD3 how you want in terms of like, do you take a flyer on a guy? Do you bring in a veteran type? Do you trust yourself to kind of be that kind of team that can survive with having a potential revolving door on that third pairing? Like that might be the way that they operate, and you have to hope that something resolves itself or you make a trade at the deadline. I thought the Bruins managed it decently during the 2023-24 season. They rotated a lot of different guys and they went out and they got peak, but for 60 games it's not great, but it wasn't a disaster either, right? And so I think the strength of the Bruins right now, in my opinion, is their left side. Lindholm, Zadorov, and then you hope Lowry takes a step forward here. He's got to work on his defense a little bit more. It's got to happen, but he also has issues that they followed him his whole career. So they're going to follow him until he shuts us up. And so, but for them, their left side is supposed to be their strength. And so they're going to have a project on the right side, and we'll see who that is.
Yeah, like that. I think that's just a sneaky question for them because like the forward stuff is obvious and it's at the forefront, literally and figuratively. That's what most people are going to be talking about. But they're sort of rebuilding the right side of their defense on the fly. They're going to have to retool on the fly, and who knows what the hell they're going to do to fill in those spots, after McAvoy, and especially if and when McAvoy has to miss time again, like it's going to be tough for them to sort of fill that in. And so just another thing that's on their plate in the off season. Ty, do you have any closing thoughts for us today?
Honestly, not particularly. What I will say is that this has been miserable. Covering this final month of the season has been miserable. Players know that the team is bad. Players know that they are limited, that they cannot do everything that, a team needs to do to win games.
Yeah.
But they're still working their ass off. And I got to commend them for that. I still think there's a lot of these guys are going to be gone a year from now. But this as a writer, analyst, fan of the sport, I've always said I'm a fan above all else. Like I'm a fan of hockey. Just give me good hockey. This has been bad hockey. This has been terrible hockey. It's not fun to watch. The guys are competing, but they do not have the horses. They barely have the ponies. It's really hard to watch this kind of hockey. And I think for the Bruins, tread lightly here. Tread lightly here. Because your fans are not going to accept a multi-year rebuild. They're just not going to. Because you haven't met them halfway. The ticket prices since the pandemic have been absolutely bonkers. They went up a year ago. And they went up again this year. They're going up again next year. Like, this is sort of, have you watched an episode of the Red Sox, the clubhouse yet?
No.
So in the first episode, I'm like halfway through it. Cora is like talking about the city of Boston, like just kind of talking about the fan base. And they're talking about the Mookie trade, and he's like, our fans are kind of getting tired. It's like Bruins fans will be like that on steroids. If you tell them, hey, we're rebuilding, but tickets still cost $85 and it costs $60 to park downstairs, they're going to be like, no, I'm going to stay home. Thank you.
Right.
And so this is where I think it's a really pivotal offseason for the Bruins. Nothing we haven't already said before, Matt, but
yeah,
it's just, this is such a miserable experience that I really don't think that your fans can palate, they can take this again. I think that right now they're dealing with it, but this can't be your long-term or even moderate-term vision for this team. It's just not going to work.
I completely agree, and I think ownership is with you on that one, Ty. We talked about that a million times. I don't think they would accept a multi-year rebuild either. And if they do, like if they're allowed to reverse course on the ticket prices and lower their prices for everything, then I would think about doing that if they're going to be, rebuilding, over, 2-3 years as opposed to trying to have a Capitals like turnaround. I'm still leaning toward that latter thing, and so I'll be looking into that, seeing the, what's out there for the Bruins, the type of moves they could possibly make to sort of replicate what the Capitals have done in the past year to turn things around and get back to the top of the Eastern Conference. I think that's going to be their goal. But ton of work to do for
Well,
Cam Neely
well,
and
real
Don Sweeney.
real quick, like this offseason might be the Wild West, in terms of offer sheets. We saw two of them a year ago. The belief is that they're less taboo now than they were, 10 years ago, 15 years ago when you had GMs threatening to fight each other, it's a little bit less taboo now to make an offer sheet play
Yeah.
for a guy. And so,
Especially if not like a guy, if it's not a guy that's going to require a bunch of first round picks, like,
right,
lower level RFAs.
right. And you look out there, there's a few guys that could make sense for the Bruins in that regard. I don't foresee them getting in on a guy like Matty Nyes out of Toronto. It'd be awesome, but I don't foresee them doing that. Um, but you get guys in Columbus like Dmitry Voronkov, Anaheim. You have Mason McTavish.
I do
Like
that.
there are some guys out there that if you're the Bruins, you look at and you go, you know what? Let's make a play here. Let's try to get this guy here. And so, um, I do wonder about that as well for the Bruins, but it's just so hard to project right now because we don't know who their head coach is going to be. Real quick, do you think it's going to be Sacco? John Sweeney gave him
No.
a quite a positive review last night on Nesson. I heard.
Oh yeah, I feel like that happens. I don't really buy into votes of confidence really, unless
Hmm.
they definitively say like he's our guy next year.
So, so what I will say about votes of confidence is that um, I was told, I don't want to get this person in trouble. I was told that Don Sweeney does not believe in public votes of confidence. He does not like doing that. He resisted doing it during the Montgomery saga or in the first, 20 games of the season because he didn't believe in it. He didn't want to do that. Because I asked, I go, well, why don't you stand by him? Because here's where things get interesting, right? Like in terms of covering a team and whatever. There were people who did not like how I was talking about Jim Montgomery, namely the situation and the speculation. And I said, okay, what do you want me to do? He doesn't have a contract. What am I
Yeah,
supposed to say? And it was kind of like, well, and I said, then stand by your man. Have Don Sweeney, hold a random availability and be like, yeah, we stand with Jim Montgomery, believe in him. We're gonna get through this. That never happened. And so I asked, why didn't that happen? Well, he doesn't believe in that. Okay. All right, that's fine.
you
So
can't have it both ways.
right. But for him to go out there and say that, is that just, treating a good soldier the right way, or is that him breaking his own rule and giving a vote of confidence? I don't know. The Sacco thing is weird to me. I think they have acknowledged he's in a weird spot the whole time. And if the market doesn't bear out the way that they want it to in terms of the options available to them, are they more likely to, say, you know what, screw it, I don't know, we'll keep him. I don't know. Like it's a little weird.
They'll tell me if I'm wrong, Ty, but my theory is that like whatever they do at head coach is going to be sort of a sign for what their overall approach is going to be and what their ambition is for next season. Like if they want to get right back to where they were before at the top of the conference like the Capitals are, I just don't see Joe Sacco being the guy that they, put the confidence in to shepherd them to that point.
Hmm.
If they do bring back Joe Sacco, that would kind of tell me that like we're gonna go through a process here. It's gonna be multiple years, and like we'll have Joe Sacco here, and they'll try to get the most out of the guys, and they'll try to be play sound hockey. But we know we're not going to win a lot of games because we just don't have the high end talent to match these other teams. But if they, if a Mike Sullivan or a Peter Laviolette, someone like that shakes free and they bring that guy in, then that tells me like they want to get back to where they want to be, which is top of the conference, playoff contender, that whole thing. I just feel like whatever they do at head coach is going to be sort of a harbinger of what they're going to do or what they want to do next year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And further to your point, this is probably going to be their final coaching decision. Like I don't know
Hmm.
many front
Yep.
offices that can, fire three coaches and bring in a fourth and then move on from him. And, they keep getting opportunities. Like at a
Yeah, no,
certain
they're gonna
point,
fire a fifth head coach in the
yeah,
front
like
office.
it's just hard to imagine. Um, so I do agree with you in that sense. But like, what if the market kind of blows? You know what I mean? Like, what if the market is like Jay Woodcroft, Peter Laviolette after flaming out in New York, John Tortorella after flaming out in Philadelphia? Like, what if that's the market, right? And it's not Jay Pandolfo and David Carl from University of Denver, and it's not Mike Sullivan. Like that, there's that part of it as well. Like, do you want to have to make a 3-year commitment to a guy that is your second or third or fifth choice? Like that's a part of that too that is going to be interesting here to watch as things unfold.
Yep, that's just another thing on the list. This feels like pretty much everything has to be
I
watched.
mean,
Like,
I mean, the checklist is like 19 items long at this
right,
point.
and like even like the guy nobody's worried about, David Pastrnak. Is he going to be the captain? Like everybody's got some kind of question
Mhm.
attached to them up and down the freaking organization. So,
It's that 50 Cent song, 21 questions.
21 questions. Interesting.
Yeah.
What's question number 21?
I actually don't know. I actually
Do
don't even
you
know if
know
he
what a
asked.
catalytic converter does? That's my 21st question.
Nah, but you can steal them and make some money.
Yes, I'm gonna go do that right now. In fact,
Hell
I
yeah.
need to make some extra cash for the weekend. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. If you're still watching and listening, thanks. I love you. This is the Sports Hub Underground. I'm Matt Dolph. He's Ty Anderson. We do pods every week. One maybe two. We're not always on YouTube at the moment, but we're working to get some video going when we're in the studio. We're going to be back in the studio for you soon. Only a couple games left for the Bruins, but then we're going to have the draft. We're going to have the offseason, which we just sort of touched on all the million, bajillion, trillion, billion, 100 trillion things they got to do in the offseason. So there's going to be plenty to talk about with the Bruins in the coming weeks and months, and we'll cover all of that for you. So thanks for listening, folks. We'll talk to you again soon.